Hey, everybody. The Real University back with another episode. I am your sight unseen auntie for the day, along
Yeah.
with, my partner in all things HBCUs not committing crimes, Mia here. And today we're going to talk to you about something that's kind of been near and dear to us for years, being HBCU alum, HBCU graduates, HBCU advocates, HBCU adjacents, all
All
the
of
things
them.
HBCU. But today
Mhm.
we're going to talk about what we would consider customer service in our own universities. And what we mean by that is how we've been serviced by the campus community and the campus administration.
Definitely would like to start this off with a story. Those who know me know that I always have a story. It's my freshman year at Morgan. And my mother, though she did not want me to attend her alma mater, she was very excited to take me along the path to make sure that I had knew all the people that we had in our village on campus. We go at the time we would do what I would call musical chairs. You have to go, sit, move, sit, stand, sit, move, sit until you got your way to whichever line you were in. So at Morgan, they had a huge room, and in that room there was like a area for you to go to for your schedule. There was an area for you to go to get your it wasn't called a bare necessity card at that time, but by the time I graduated it was, but like your student ID. There was a space where you would go if you had to you owed a balance and you couldn't register. There was all of these different areas. And so my mother, bless her heart, felt the need to take me on my first journey through this process, because all of these happened like the week that school started. So you had some kids who were still trying to figure it out while some kids were getting ready. They were loading into their dormitories, blah, 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 blah. So I'm saying this story for a reason. So my mothers were in this line and she's talking to me about what I didn't even understand was going to occur. I didn't get it until my sophomore year when I didn't have to stand in these lines. But coming back, so we're in the line. And you overhear conversation. You hear some kids who are left there to fend for themselves. You have some kids whose parents are there with them, but they don't really know what's going on because the parents have never gone. And you have my mom who's kind of like identifying all of these different things that are happening. When we talk about customer service, and I felt like this was a great time. Our uncle isn't with us. Tyan is playing Madam Producer right now, so I guess I get to speak a little bit more than I usually do. But when we talk about customer service, there is an internal being, an internal space where the faculty at all of the schools, HBCUs, private PWIs, whichever ones you're attending, community colleges, it's the internal staff's job to service us. Fellow employees, students, so on and so forth. As we are here probably a little bit over a month out before everyone starts to begin the journey back to school. Some people will do it for the first time. Some people are coming back as sophomores with the whole game plan. One thing that I wanted to point out is that we have a duty. We have a duty to be able to walk into a space, communicate our needs in a very respectful tone, which is why I'm practicing my inside respectful tone so that I can demonstrate, former educator here, so that I can demonstrate what a calm voice looks like, because there are circumstances that are going to happen. Schedules will get lost. Classes will be full. Budget of not budget the bursar's office might not reflect that payment that your husband paid right before you got on the plane that allows your daughter to register for her classes. You might not be able to get a dolly to get your luggage up the steps or up the elevator to the dormitory, whatever the thing that's gonna happen, because what do we know? It's gonna happen.
Well, Mia, I
Let's
got to
walk.
interject on a couple
Gonna
things too,
happen. I was about to turn it
because
over to you.
because we we have to understand from the time that we experienced that for the first time, there has been a technological shift.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the issues that we may have had with the manual process have been improved.
Well,
Not
I'm not even
not
discussing my issue. I'm not even trying to hone in on the manual process. I'm trying to hone in on the tonality that people use to address other people. I'm trying to hone in on how we approach the conversation when it's one that we don't quite understand. Because technology driven or improved or not improved, that's not even the issue. The issue is
but
how we approach the issues.
that's actually the point that I was about to make. Going through that process within the last 3 years with a newer college student, it's very rare that we are face to face now.
Mm,
So, with that, yes, the lines are still there, but there's kiosks.
mm,
The challenge is actually trying to find someone to talk to.
mm,
Um, Making sure that, because I'll say this, that orientation, yes, that's a face-to-face experience nowadays. But again, it's more informal. Now, again, if you have questions and things like that, having someone accessible, that's another piece of the frustration. But again, that manual process isn't there anymore. But what I can speak to as far as your concerns are the pre-process before you get there. And that's where someone like me, have being an admissions officer, steps in. I've even talked to our newest Midwest rep for Morgan, and her job is totally different from how I came in the game as an admission officer. She's really just responsible for recruiting. The whole admissions process is automated. And so,
so before you dive further into that space, because I wanted to come back and just really say how I wanted to start this. The times have changed. I get all of that part. What I recognize, and I guess you talk to somebody from admissions. I just had a conversation with somebody else I know who works over at the school now, and the problems seem to be, before, by the time you get past all the technology, the internal works, which is where I was going with it. They don't know their job because they don't know what they're doing. And it creates even more of an issue. So we can come back to what you're saying, but I want to make sure that we address that part as well, because at some point in time, you do get in contact with a human and you are engaging with a human. And that's when it all goes left. But let's continue going with what your the job and the role is, because I just think it's important for parents to understand how these dynamics play a part in how your child gets to show up on campus after you're gone. So go ahead. I'm gonna let you finish.
and so, I mean, and actually, I'll go back and address to, the point of, there are some people that, don't know their jobs. And I can attest to a couple of things with coming out of COVID, downsizing. We've moved to a remote campus in a lot of places. We're moved to online courses and things like that. So again, there's bodies who are there literally to shuffle things through, not to solve problems.
Right.
Because sometimes, to your point, they don't know the problems that arise if we haven't properly trained the staff to integrate technology and integrate the new campus experience.
Correct.
So, and I'll say this, being in the higher ed space, from just being there from a volunteer space, because that's what I know and I love, but also working on it from a perspective from a marketing perspective within my career. Higher education has been hurting. And with that, the funds are not available. With that, the available positions are not available. So just as you have layoffs and cutbacks in your corporate settings, you have that in the educational setting. So basically, we're not properly staffed. if we're looking for that human interaction. But also we're dealing with a generation that is not used to human interaction and really don't want it until they don't know what it is that they don't know.
Until they realize that they need it because the technology isn't supporting the issue or isn't helping them fix the issue. The help desk isn't targeting the issue. Whatever it is, it's not until those moments occur that we want real people. And let's be clear, we're talking about the HBCU experience. We're talking about the college experience. But in real life right now, if you had to call T-Mobile, AT&T, Comcast, Georgia Power, BG&E, the Department of Labor, the Department of Human Resources, the IRS, I don't care who you had to call. You get frustrated before you get in the human because why?
Because customer service, you're on the phone.
You're talking to technology. You're getting frustrated before you get right.
I'd like customer service.
000000000.
Your menu items and what I'm speaking to you on your virtual assistant is not picking up on what my particular issue is. And I think that's, again, that's a drawback, and that's where we're going as a society. But again, I'll say this. When you started with your story, and in your preparation, I'll say this. I came through a public school system that had me very well prepared. When I went to a college prep school, I had been selecting classes, selecting teachers, registration process, aligning my schedule to my curriculum since I was 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I understand a lot of other school systems are not as fortunate. A lot of other schools in my city were not as fortunate. I went to my school was an anomaly with that because you came in with a major. It was called a curriculum there, but you came in with a major. So literally our whole college prep experience was that of what I had when I walked on to Lincoln University's campus and Morgan State University's campus for the first time. I was a novice.
But when you fast forward to now, because where we are now, right? Mm-hmm. The issues aren't in selecting the classes or any. Well, actually, that's a whole other thing because it's how the automated
registration process goes.
But one of the things that my person that I was talking to today, she said, "I love my school." She works at a HBCU. She works at HBCU. She said, "But I just hate the fact that we are so behind in technology." So we're still working at a deficit, mm-hmm. which still causes the issues, which still has the issue that we're talking about, which is the customer service ability to actually hone in and to make it different at the end, to make it better. At the end of the day, these students, their parents, their customers, they pay a lot of money for their children to come and receive a higher education. They have expectations, though they may be a little off depending on what it is. The approach to how you get to the human and then what happens when you get to the human will always determine whether or not the issue will be solved and you won't have to deal with it again. So we can get into the particulars all we want to all day long, but at the end of the day, how we deal, and we just gave a perfect example. By the time we get a human on the phone with all these corporations that have way more customers than these campuses do, right? We're so irritated because we had to talk to a robot for 10 minutes, press the 0 50 times, get hung up on, call back again before we even get to a person. But by the time we get to that person, I can tell you right now, I'm not always the nicest person in the world.
So again, I think then that works both ways, because that's where, as a society, we need to be courteous and considerate of one another as well.
Which so now even finally coming to what I want to talk about. Exactly.
Yep. Even though you're frustrated, and this is one of the things I learned probably in my late 20s. Just because I'm frustrated doesn't mean I need to take my frustrations off on you, because I'm actually not frustrated with you. I'm frustrated with the process. I'm frustrated with the computer. I should have the attitude with the computer, not the first human that I get. And understanding if we're all of the same ilk, if we're, again, if I'm giving you attitude, you're giving me attitude and I'm giving it right back, even though we could be a little bit more understanding. And I could say, you know what, I understand your frustration. I can't solve that problem, but let's talk to each other as new people.
Correct. Correct. Because let me tell you what happens. The parent, the mother, the father, the guardian, whomever, they leave with whatever the situation is. And now your kid is on campus having to fend for themselves because what do we know? No one answers the phone. So it's going to be, I remember getting on that shuttle bus going all the way to Montebello, knowing that I would get a faster response at Montebello, waiting in line to talk to somebody than I would if I ever decided to call. That's a whole nother conversation too, because internally, I think that some of these schools need to stop playing. They need to figure out how to make sure that they are providing the proper customer service. But let me not go there. But once your parent leaves and you're on campus and you have to go and have these conversations, that customer service is everything, because you might be known as the kid whose parent went off. You might be remembered as the kid whose parent was so respectful. You might be remembered as the kid who didn't know what they were doing, but one of the little village mamas inside the office puts her hand on your shoulder and said, "Come on, son, let me help you out." You never know what's going to happen, but when you approach it from a respectful space, and I can't tell you how many college administrators I've talked to who have horrible stories about parents and the behavior that happens when they get on these
You know that
campuses.
as an educator.
Well, God is good, because I've never had to deal with that. But yes, I've definitely seen it go down in live and in real time, because parents, I mean, these are their babies, right? These are their babies, and a lot of time they're frustrated.
But I was going to say too, at what point in time, so it's the parents that come on for the first time with their babies, but this is a 4 to 7 year journey. And not to say that each time you come back, for each semester, there's not going to be issues. It's at what point in time do you look at that as preparing you to handle conflict, preparing you to stand up and advocate for yourself, preparing you to pivot when problems arrive, or making sure you were prepared in the beginning? Because again, I can also speak as a former admissions officer. I got people who probably thought that they were nickel slick. They get to the registration line, or had not been even particularly honest. They get to a point where they're coming back to admissions because they have no financial aid. Well, what was the second step in the process after you were admitted? And then you want me to solve that problem for you when you didn't do what it is that you were supposed to do. Now everybody's at fault, parent.
And then administrators get a little twang in their tone and get a little stern in their approach sometimes a little slick in the comments, and then it just goes all the way south. And you are absolutely correct, sir. Outside of being admitted and accepted, you had to have done these things. Now, the fact that you haven't done it, there's nothing that I can do now. There's nothing wrong. I mean, you can say that, because
And people don't want to hear that. And sometimes people don't want to hear that. And
no, all the times they don't want to hear it.
And so it's again, and I mean, you and I both are School of Business graduates. You and I are both marketing students of marketing. We understand that customer service is a part of your whole marketing and your consumer experience, like that consumer journey. We understand that. We've studied that. We know the psychology behind it. Everybody else doesn't. But it's one of those things where each situation is unique and different. I'm not going to say that even in the modern times we didn't have to stand in lines, but I had to prepare my child to say, you're going to have to stand in some lines. I had to have that conversation with him before he went, because my mother had the conversation before I went to say, okay, early bird gets the worm. You're at an HBCU. Lines are life.
Lines are life.
If they say registration opens, or when you get your ID, because actually it took my son 3 days to get his ID because he didn't get his ID online.
Oh,
Again,
okay.
we give you that option, but if you decide not to take it, you have to suffer the consequences and be prepared for
Mhm.
those consequences. So those are the
Correct.
things that, make an adult out of you. So
Absolutely. The decisions you make. Absolutely. Great
yeah.
example.
So with that, and I told him, and I even gave him that advice. I says, well, since you opted not to send in a picture, you wanted to take a fresh picture. If the only thing holding you back from standing in line for 3 days was you having a fresh picture on your ID versus sending in an old picture that you had, that was this decision you had to make, and that was this sacrifice of time that you just made.
So we didn't realize that we could have taken a picture of ourselves with our phone, a new picture, and just sent it in.
He realized that, but did you hear what I said? He wanted a new picture.
But at that time, it would have
That's
been
what he
there because
wanted. That's what he wanted. So that was his decision.
he thought he was going to grow up over the summer. That's what that was.
It didn't matter, but he thought
That's
that
what it
it would
was.
be an automatic, oh, I just go up and process. Well, there's probably, if you're in a school with an enrollment, a freshman enrollment of almost 5,000 people,
Yeah.
maybe a third of them still thought the same way that you thought.
Yeah. So all 2,000 of
So
y'all,
you
or
so you
almost
got to get in
2,000 of
line.
y'all.
But the other piece of advice that I gave him that I'll give to any of my HBCU students, at any point in time that you think there's going to be a line, you don't go to the line when it opens. The line opens at 9 o'clock. No, you need to be there at 5 a.m. in the morning.
So I did the opposite. I did the evening lines because I knew that
Now that,
everyone was
yep.
rushing the line. So I was okay with doing the late line. I did the late because usually I didn't have to stand in a line because everyone did the during the daytime early morning thing. And I'm just giving that advice right there.
Yep, and whichever is your preference, because but also the risk of the evening lines or the late lines is something has broken down, and that was also part of the issue when he had to stand in line, because again, the technology, the equipment is overwhelmed, something can break down.
Yeah.
And there's you might not get that second shift. So
Yeah.
anything, and we talked about this in our move out episode. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong.
Absolutely. Doing registration.
So understand, I think really what the message that we need to give to everybody is, on both sides, pack your patience.
Pack it. That there it is. So pack your patience. Because it's like if you learn that early in life, it so much easier as you go if you
And
learn
be
it earlier
prepared,
in life.
because I remember a lot of the crankiness comes from the basics. You rushed over there, you didn't eat breakfast, and then you didn't expect to be standing in line for 3 hours. So now not only you're hungry, you turn hangry.
Right.
And
Right.
if you haven't met anybody in line that you're cool enough with to say, you know what, can you hold my place in line while I go get something to eat? Or matter of fact, I'll be the one to go get us all something to eat. That's where those friendships are made.
Absolutely. Amen. That's where you met somebody who wasn't in your major. But when you
Yes.
see it from that moment on, y'all friends because you weathered that storm. And I have like 4 friendships like that I can name right now. Right now. That I
And
met in that capacity.
And also making sure that you're prepared means having all your paperwork accessible, because that point in time that you finally get to the line and the person asks you for this and you don't have it and you got to come back the second day.
Or in today's way, you're in a space where your Wi-Fi isn't working and you can't use
Oh,
your
girl,
phone. You
yes,
thought
speak
you could
on
get
it.
it. So some things you still need to print. Please make sure you have a printed copy. Because
Say
if
that
you can't, make sure you have a printed copy.
again for those in the back,
A printed copy.
for those
Because
on the
when you get
side.
a printed copy, because if that Wi-Fi is not working and they say that they need a copy of something, and if you don't have it and they tell you you got to go back, I'm telling you right now, it was your fault that you upset. It was your fault because I said today at 8:48 p.m. Eastern Standard on the 8th of July that you needed to have a printed copy when you go and stand in some of these lines, depending on what it's for.
And, again, let's give some tips and tricks, because actually, quite honestly, from being an administrator, I'm kind of an expert, and also, like I said, staying close to this. And so parents and students alike, take that freshman orientation time seriously. Make sure you do whatever you need to do to get to those orientations. Take these schools up on their offer for the admitted student lunches that you may have.
Yep.
As soon as you get your admissions letter, call somebody.
Send an email.
Send an
Get
email.
Get their name. Let them know your name, because there's nothing better when you walk into a space and say, "Oh, Miss Ferguson, I remember talking to you. How was your summer?"
And not only that, again, speaking on, a most recent experience, I had a student that I set up that way. I would have loved to accompany her, but, I couldn't. And I sat her down, gave her a whole breakdown of what to expect when she went on that campus. And I actually told her to write it down. Don't put it on your phone, write it down. I set up people for her to meet face to face, because with that, it wasn't just getting through the admissions process. It was show your face, because this is your new family if you decide to get there.
Correct.
And these are the people that that you can rely on at any point in time. That was a person in admissions, that was a person in financial aid, that was a student that was currently matriculating.
Somebody over in the cafeteria, so you can make sure that you got your favorites on them days. Somebody in the other areas that have food, because you never know when you get there too late. Somebody who opens and closes that campus. Like, these are real people that you.
And parents, please don't miss the opportunity to take them to visit that campus, because again, like I said, I'm a novice, but when we went to visit the campus, I actually had him fill out the application in the admissions office there in front of everybody, so that we could answer all of the questions, even though, he had pre-filled out the application. Listen, let's finalize things there. While we're here at this visit, since you made the decision, let me pay housing deposit. First thing I said, now that's the one piece of advice.
Oh, that housing deposit.
Don't take housing for granted at all, especially if you're coming from out of state, because the worst thing that you want is to just show up. You haven't paid a deposit. You have not inquired about where you're going to lay your head, and somebody has to leave you behind.
And when you get there, you ain't got no room.
And quite honestly, that's one of the pieces where, Mia, I'm on your side with that. And I'll go back to a couple of episodes before where we talked about underfunding of our HBCUs, because that actually plays a direct role in the issues that we have with administration. Going back to the earlier part of your conversation where you were saying that, we're not servicing properly. Well, we don't have the funds sometimes to service properly. And that's where we need to actually advocate for our schools at a legislative level to say, and we need to actually be advocates for our own selves and say, the money that we're receiving from the state, the money that we're receiving from the federal government, how is that being allocated? And how does that affect me? Because again, underfunding means I might not have housing available. But everybody asks the question, well, if you don't have the rooms, why did you admit the students? Well, a lot of the times students decide what they're going to do at the last minute and think that that's actually okay. No, when we ask for your acceptance letter, when we ask for that deposit, it's to ensure that you have a spot. So those who come on at the last minute to say, I decided to, and actually, even if you decide to turn that school down, let somebody know. Be courteous. Be courteous to the next student who probably would have wanted your spot.
Customer service. So there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different angles. And I think what my intention was when we came up, when I was, Tyon says, well, me, what's the conversation today? And I'm like, customer service, right? Because I had about 5 conversations this week, parents taking kids to the little summer get to know campus situation, and I'm just going to drop them off and leave. And I'm like, you might not want to do that because, most of these people, this is the parents' first time doing it. I'm like, you might not want to do that. Let me take you down the road. And I've gotten great responses. Ferguson, I didn't even think about that. Or Mia, I didn't even go to college, so I wasn't even thinking in that capacity. Or, I figured, we got this far. Like my job is done. I'm like, your job has just begun, friend. And let's not forget what it was like when you were in school. Not that the process is the same, but with the levels, it's a very high strung, high energy time period. There's a lot of nerves moving around, right? Excitement, just fear, like all types of things. And so I think it's really important as we navigate and we just see how people deal with each other on a regular day-to-day basis. It's really important to understand what customer service looks like. We are in a society nowadays where we come across all types of things that give us feedback instantaneously about the things that we do. But at the end of the day, how we treat one another is the most important thing. It's the most important thing because that's the only way that we're actually able to move around. So take it into consideration, practice the pause if you need to. I say it all the time. Practice the pause, practice the patience. I think, Tanya, I forgot what you just said, but I loved how you said it. Just be very intentional about how and the level of respect that you serve when wanting and you're in a space where you should be served and you should feel like you're being served. Universities, this is directly to you. So we're here to support the parents and the kids, but at the end of the day, it is a real village and you are part of that village. And I'm hoping that there's somebody from the university level that hears this and hears it very clearly. You are a huge portion of this customer service experience. Take the time, talk to your teams, have them understand, because we know, Tanya, what do we know? Some of these folks at these universities have the worst attitudes.
Yes, they do. And then again, I think we like it not to make excuses for
Like a
anybody, but we
government worker.
liken it to the human experience. Because I mean, how many days have you gone to work and just not been feeling it at all? And you can't call in.
Right.
So again, I think there's just having grace for being human, having basic respect for one another. And I'm going to say this all too well, your tone. And my mother used to get on me about that because, I wasn't always a bright and sunny type of person, but it's your tone. It's the tone that I respond in. It's those inflections. It's, I can hear you about to be on some BS from the octave that you're giving me. And so from that octave, I might give you a look. And if you don't get that look, because I will be the first one to tell you, I'm small in stature, but I got volume too. So again, it's treat people, the golden rule, treat people how you want to be treated.
Absolutely.
And sometimes suck that up. Sometimes you might have to walk away, or you might have to look at that person and say, you know what? I'm going to let you get all of that out. But when you really come back and need something from me, remember the way that you talk to me and that I have the option not to serve you anymore.
It always happens. And so please, 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 as we get ready to embrace and embark on a new semester, let's embark and embrace how we treat each other, because customer service is truly key. This is Mia Ferguson from the Real University, bringing you real conversation for our parents and our students, along with my wonderful co-host who has ghosted me twice into 2 times in a row now, guys. I have not seen Tyan's face in 2 weeks, but she's here. She's here. She's here. Tyan, tell me you're here.
My spirit is always there, but I gotta go through that healing process.
She's going through the process, right? She's going through the process. So again, we understand each other. This is where we are. We appreciate you guys. We miss Andy. Andy will be back next week. Talk to you later. Bye.